Hi, welcome to another episode of Isaiah's Newsstand. It's your host, Isaiah Edwards. How the heck are ya? A little bit of an extra. I won't. I almost want to say bonus, broadcast podcast episode. But just wanted to kind of get in here and get in some of the Ukraine Russia stuff a little bit early. I feel like I got enough that I can get maybe a couple episodes of content up. So I wanted to kind of roll those out, starting today. So a little bit of a treat, if you will. Let's see. Took today off. This week's been a little bleh. Overall things are good, but stressing. Money's a thing. That's life. We're living in inflated times. Little extra news, but I guess what? I think we're up to the highest rate that we've been in like 40 years, like 7.9. So I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it, Mr. Krabs. But also just internet. I don't know. I've had some blah interactions. What a tasty word that I just made up there. Interactions. And, it's been kind of getting my goat. I gotta get out of that funk sometimes. I gotta take some advice and log off, But, I like to stay connected all the same. So, it's a little bit of thicker skin, ignoring things that don't really matter, engaging with the things that do, having the right mindset, all that good jazz. I'm working on it. Let's see. Movie corner. I did treat myself today, and I went to go see the Batman. It was very good. I would say 8 out of 10, 10 being great, 1 being trash. So 8, it was really good. No spoilers or anything like that. No worries. But no, I did enjoy it. It definitely was like hella detective Batman, which was really, really cool. Colin Farrell like acted his ass off. Like, I mean, I literally did not recognize him. Like he was on his Christian Bale shit. I just remember staring at him. I'm like, this does not look like Colin Farrell. Like there's nothing here that I'm like, it's giving Colin Farrell, and it's just he's another person. He is the Penguin. So that was really cool. Yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Food corner. Let's see. I had a stuffed crust pizza and fries. The pizza was from Pizza Hut, so it's not really memorable. The fries were from McDonald's. Other than that, nothing too wild, nothing too crazy. But I'd be eating, I'd be grubbing. But yeah, let's get into some new stuff. Let's see. Most of my headlines that I have are not like on the battlefield today. Kind of like a little bit of orbital news, but stuff I wanted to talk about all the same. Let's see. I got this from The Hill. Gosh, gotta stop with that shit. Idioms are crazy. Biden says U.S. allies to revoke most favored nations trade status for Russia. This is kind of, I think this dropped today, but essentially the United States and the group of 7, the G7 nations, are going to revoke the most favored nation status for Russia. So for pretty much, it's just another one of the pile-ons that are kind of happening with the sanctions. Essentially, this is going to allow more tariffs on Russian goods. So it's just going to make it harder for Russia to move and sell their stuff. Kind of an add-on to this that we will be getting to. Okay, maybe I'll just bump that up now. The Russian oil ban. We also instituted that. It was kind of said like, hey, we're not going to touch the oil and gas sector of Russia. We're still going to be interacting with them. But I guess we decided that, hey, things are getting rough. It's not getting better. They're not laying off. So we have to increase the sanctions. And they did it right away. So essentially the Congress like came together, very bipartisan. And not only did they do a Russian oil ban, they also, I believe, approved some money for more aid to Ukraine. So that's a big deal. A little bit of double whammy there. Though at the same time, I say big deal in terms of the oil shit. it isn't and isn't. Like for us, it's 8% of what we get from our oil. I think a lot of what we get is from Saudi Arabia. So, this isn't really going to hurt us in that regard, in that way. But at the same time, it's also then not going to hurt Russia that much. Like, it makes their oil potentially cheaper. This is some extra stuff I got from AP News. Let's see what the title they think they had on here. Explainer. What does a U.S. ban on Russian oil accomplish? So essentially, they were kind of going on to say, like, us banning it also further deflates it and makes it, cheaper. So there's a little bit of like, cutting on their cost there. So therefore, they're not going to make as much. But Europe is very reliant on Russian oil and gas. Germany was able to say, hey, we won't go further along with the Nord Stream 2, but they can't really go further than that right now. They're working on doing things, I think. I think other European nations are as well, but they're all kind of on the teat, if you will. So they can't really pull off like as easily as we can. So, this is something that's hurting Russia more, it's doing more damage, but at the same time, it's also hurting us too. I'm sure you've seen at the pump, I think the average gas in the US right now is $4.30, actually in rising, or so about $4.30. Here in Cincinnati, where I live, it is about $4.08, $4.09. So I mean, it's rough. It's definitely one of those situations where you go, man, like I can't, me personally, I rarely fill my tank. I kind of just I'm a half gallon Andy, if you will. So I'm definitely kind of getting back into that nature, really sticking to it. Like, hey, I'm going to put $10 of gas in here and I'm going to make it for a few days. And if I need more, I'm going to get a little more. So yeah, I mean, it's a bleed on both ends. It sucks. And I don't know. I mean, these sanctions, I'm really on the fence about, as well. Let's add on to the stack. Let's make it a combo meal, if you will. That's a segue, babies. McDonald's is also pulling out, as well as Starbucks, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Yum, and some other brands that I'm going to try to get into real quick in another article I got from CNN. McDonald's, Starbucks, and Coca-Cola leave Russia. Now, McDonald's, I guess, 30 years ago, I think it was around the end of Soviet era, Russia, whatever. I'm not sure exactly on the details, but I did see a little picture of people lined up at the first opening day of McDonald's, and it was like a huge deal. And I mean, I'm obviously jaded as an American, Westerner. Like, I eat McDonald's every day, I mean, there was a time where I definitely did. I eat it a lot still. But it's like, oh yeah, whatever, it's McDonald's. But someone told me that people in Russia were standing in line for like hours to get a meal because it was just such a crazy big deal and they wanted to try a Big Mac or whatever. So them leaving the country is obviously a big move. It's a big deal. Also, it's a big deal too. Something that kind of a little bit of detail that I didn't really think about. Like globally, most of the McDonald's are operated by franchise operators. So they're people or like smaller groups who say, hey, we're going to buy McDonald's, we're going to start one up or whatever. And we're going to, employ the staff and, we get the products from McDonald's, but like it's our building, it's our stuff, I think. More or less how that goes as a franchise operator. But in Russia, I think 84% of their locations are operated by the company itself. So them pulling out is a really big deal. Let's see, there's a quote here. In Russia, we employ 62,000 people who have poured their heart and soul into our McDonald's brand to serve their communities. We work with hundreds of local Russian suppliers and partners who produce the food for our menu and support our brand. And we serve millions of Russian customers each day who count on McDonald's. In the 30 plus years that McDonald's has operated in Russia, we've become an essential part of the 850 communities in which we operate. At the same time, our values mean we cannot ignore the needless human suffering unfolding in Ukraine. This was Kempinski. I guess he's like a spokesperson for McDonald's. So, essentially that's a big statement. And I think people have been imploring McDonald's and these other companies to say, hey, you got to do something. You got to get out of there. And that's a big reason why a lot of companies have been pulling out. I didn't mention it when we were talking about the Russian oil, but Shell has pulled out. BP has as well. I think Exxon. So, I mean, a lot of places are just saying, hey, this is too hot. And plus, not to mention, it's just a bad look. We don't want to support this. We aren't okay with this war, this conflict, or whatever you want to call it. And they're not doing business with Russia. So, it's a big deal. Also, too, in terms of sanctions, I know I'm kind of doing the thing where I get caught in the mix here, and I'm just kind of firing off. A little bit of an update. Roman Abramovich did get a sanction from UK. They wound up clapping up the boy. I don't want to say our boy, but I did cover him, so I don't know. I get a little bit attached to the story. But I think he did kind of do these things to kind of get ahead of the situation, and still all the same, he just kind of couldn't get ahead of it. A lot of oligarchs are just getting their card punched in the situation, and they're not really able to then operate, with their money. But I'm sure they're rich. They're going to have their ways. When you're rich, you're never really struggling. You just find a way. It's the poor people who get hurt in these things, which I'm, hopefully going to try to get to my little sum up of this part. But let's see. Danone, I think, was one I really wanted to cover because it's they do silk milk alternatives, Activia, Oikos yogurt, baby formula, and more. And I think they said they're still going to operate their essential things let's see, they have a quote. They want to maintain our production and distribution of fresh dairy products and infant nutrition to still meet the essential food needs of the local population. Unilever, which I believe also is like Axe, hygiene stuff. I guess as well as food here. They said, we will continue to supply our everyday essential food and hygiene products made in Russia to the people in the country. But they also added that we will keep this under close review. Even KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and that's Yum. That's like Yum brands. And Habit Grill, I've never heard of them. But they are also pulling out. And they have 1,000 KFC restaurants and 50 pizza locations in the country. So there's no more stuffed crust for Russia. That's a tier. Putin, that's on you, buddy. But yeah, with the sanctions and stuff, it sucks because it's one of those things where I don't really feel like it hurts the oligarchs. It doesn't really put the pressure on them to say, hey, Putin, you got to do something, man. And even if it did, it's not going to really change the situation. The die is pretty much cast at this point. The thing with the sanctions, it's almost like when you it's just like in the situation if you're bringing out a gun to a war. That's why I think Russia really wanted to try to sway this as it's an economic declaration of war, because you're bringing your bigger guns out with the sanctions. And this is a classic U.S. move where it's hey, we don't like what you're doing. We disagree. We're just going to not fuck with you. And we're going to tell the world to not fuck with you. And all this shit winds up compounding. I'm definitely getting on a tangent here, but I've been getting back into Blowback, and that's a podcast I listen to. Covers a lot of political history and stuff. They did a great season on Cuba. And I know that's a hot button issue, talking about communism and all that stuff. Is Fidel Castro good or bad? They really get into it and cover how these things happened. And I'm still getting into it, still getting through it. But it's definitely one of those things where it just kind of goes to show we didn't like the way we thought things were going to go in Cuba. And also our financial, interests were at stake, quote unquote. We were going to take it on the chin or take a little bit of a haircut in terms of the sugar or whatever and the land that we wanted to take from them and control from them. And essentially, because Fidel was more liberal, we said, oh, you're trying to be a communist. No way, buddy. And we immediately more or less just started sanctioning them. And we do that to a bunch of other countries. And in a weird twist of fate, we have to now start potentially thinking hey, Venezuela, a place that's a lot of, crazy shit's going on. I don't know the name of the, I believe, dictator in power right now. I want to say Menudo, but that's wrong. I know it just starts with an M. But essentially, we've had him and the country of Venezuela under sanctions. They were a big oil provider at one point. I think they were shipping up to like 3 billion a day, which is a big number. But we crippled them, and now the best they can do now is 800,000. And kind of what I mentioned with the pipeline stuff in a previous episode, like people just want us to like just crank up the Keystone pipeline and just fix all this shit. That's just not how this works. Like, these things need constant repair and maintenance, and if that's not happening, then guess what? It's in a state of disrepair, and it's going to take time to fix. And Venezuela is in a whole state of that, and they don't have the means to fix that stuff because people have left because of the sanctions imposed, and also just the strife and unrest in their country. That's a whole other episode. But we're doing the kind of shit that you kind of just can't come back from. There's no way that even if Russia pulled out right the fuck now, that it's like, oh, okay, cool, that's great, thanks, now we can take these sanctions off. Like, maybe to a point some would be lifted, but the damage is already set in, So this whole Russia fortress strategy, I do think will hold up and withstand these sanctions. I think they're going to do fine. I think the oil shit is going to kind of almost like 3-card Monty shuffle around, where like, okay, we'll buy oil from them, they'll sell their oil to those people, we'll buy oil, and it's just like a whole changing of hands. So we'll see there. Let's see, a couple of other things I wanted to cover that popped up. There is a story I got from Total Pro Sports. It's also kind of made the headlines in other places, but this is just where I got it from. Brittany Griner's wife speaks out as WNBA superstars facing 10 years in Russian prison. So this is a story that popped up over the week. Brittany Griner's wife, Sherelle, spoke out. And, it was in an Instagram post. Let's see if I can read it. Thank you to everyone who has reached out to me regarding my wife's safe return from Russia. Your prayers and support are greatly appreciated. I love my wife wholeheartedly. So this message comes during one of the weakest moments of my life. I understand that many of you have grown to love BG over the years and have concerns and want details. Please honor our privacy as we continue to work on getting my wife home safely. Thank you. Essentially, this has kind of happened and been developing, but we didn't know about it until it was reported, like by Russia, like state, whatever. Essentially, she was in like the airport or something like that. She had a cannabis on her, I believe, kind of like the liquid, like the vape kind of stuff. Essentially, she was busted on that, and they have a really strict cannabis policy. So essentially, she's looking at like 5 to 10 years in a Russian prison for just having that in her bag. And I know some people are like, oh, well, she's a professional superstar. What's she doing in Russia, playing, on an international sports team? But essentially, she makes a lot more money, significantly more money, playing abroad than she does playing at home, in the U.S. So it's a situation that she's stuck with, being a career, basketball player. She's one of the best, I believe, in the league. So this is definitely a big deal. I believe that, talks are being made now to try to like look at the situation, deal with the situation, get her back home. Hopefully we'll be able to keep you posted on that. But maybe potentially, this is maybe a little bit speculative for me, but I picked this up kind of like through the grapevine, but got the article from CNN Politics. Russian American charged with acting as a legal Russian agent in the U.S. So a dual citizen by the name of Elena Branson has been charged Tuesday with acting and conspiring to act in the U.S. illegally as an agent of the Russian government. Willfully failing to register under Foreign Agents Registration Act, conspiring to commit visa fraud and making false statements to the FBI, according to a criminal complaint. So I don't think she's actually been arrested or turned herself in, but she has been charged. I'm not sure. Please feel free to correct me if I got that wrong. But essentially, they're trying to get her for trying to spread Russian propaganda. She's started some campaigns in America, like I love Russia, and it's like aimed to like target like American youth and I guess get them stoked about Russia, which is kind of weird, but I mean, I guess that's something you could do, but obviously that's not the vibe right now. And I don't know, it does kind of signal to me that things are kind of amping up in the whole politique situation where it's like, look, and I didn't mention this once again, we're talking a lot. Russian gas is really important. It's kind of the key motif here. But in Venezuela, like I said, we had sanctions and all this kind of stuff. They did a Good Samaritan thing, humanitarian thing, and they released some prisoners. And that was just kind of like a measure of good faith, I guess, because they really want us to work with them. They really want us to lift some of these sanctions and stuff. So essentially, that kind of vibe might be playing out here with Brittany Griner and then potentially with Elena Branson. Branson, I believe, is someone who has even like potential contact with Putin. But like, it's just one of those situations where it's like, hey, if you're coming for ours and taking ours, and we're going to come for yours type shit. So, I mean, we'll see how that plays out. But definitely something I wanted to cover because it was interesting. Also something kind of dark and, in my opinion, a little dystopian. But I definitely wanted to cover it. Let's see. The internet's playing some games with me. Give me a sec. Actually, this is a good time for me to take a little brr. Whew. Okay. Thanks for being with me. Ooh, give me a second. Trains are chugging. I got this from Reuters. Facebook allows war posts urging violence against Russian invaders. So, that's a mouthful of a sentence, right? Essentially, Meta, and I got this from Reuters, March 10th. But Meta platforms will allow Facebook and Instagram users in some countries to call for violence against Russian and Russian soldiers in context of the Ukraine invasion, according to internal emails seen by Reuters on Thursday, in a temporary change to its hate speech policy. So, essentially, this goes up as high as you can call for threats against Vladimir Putin, against the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, which I guess we are acknowledging him as president. I don't believe that was actually confirmed or not, but whatever. I'm being petty in that way. But it even goes as far as like you can like say, hey, like there are Russian soldiers here, we should go fuck them up, like, or whatever. Like, as long as you're not targeting actual normal civilians and you're not targeting prisoners of war, then you get the green light. And to me, I read that, and maybe this is me just taking it too far, my little liberal blue heart, but like that feels like a purge situation. That's really crazy. I mean, if this was rewound back into, the 1950s or whatever, this wouldn't be a crazy concept. Like, it would definitely be being employed, but it's just crazy to see it happen real time in your timeline right now. Like, it's literally Facebook is like, yeah, we got to do it. We got to just let them do it. Like, you can send the post. Like, so I don't think this is anywhere beyond Facebook or Instagram. I haven't seen anything like this from like Twitter. But wow, it was definitely an eye opener. So, I wanted to put that out there. 'Cause yeah. And then also there was an exchange, potential exchange talks, about some fighter jets, that were, potentially going to go to Ukraine. I believe they're like MiG-19s or MiG-29s. Yeah, MiG-29 fighter jets. They're kind of specific because Ukrainian or Zelensky has asked for them because the Ukrainian fighters are trained on these kind of fighter jets. They're like Soviet era, so they know how to use them. And they were asking for them, and they're like, "Hey, can we have them? We need them in the effort, please. It would help us defend the skies." It was definitely something that was kind of like, "Oh, okay, that sounds like that sounds like a crackerjack idea." And but then Poland was like, "Oh yeah, bet we'll totally make that happen." And we're like, "Oh shit, like now?" And Poland's like, "Yeah, no, we have them, but we want to send them to your air base in Germany, and then they'll be yours to handle because we don't want to actually be the ones to give them to the Ukrainians because we're on the border, and like Putin has already said that would be an act of war if we did that, and like we don't really want to start nothing, but you can do it. We'll send them to your airbase, no problem." And like kind of the conversation point was, well, like, okay, we'll do that, and it's like, oh yeah, you also have to give us jets to replace, like, make us whole, because like we're giving you these jets, so like we need jets back. And they're like, oh, okay, but we also would have to paint them. We'd have to take all the NATO stuff off. Also, it's funny hearing them say that all the steps that they have to do, because like naturally we can't actually give them like NATO shit, even though we've more or less indirectly funded them with this weaponry anyway. And it's almost like we're saying this as if like they don't like Russia, the Kremlin doesn't like read or get news. I don't know, but they're like, okay. And so pretty much like U.S. is kind of like, I don't know. I don't think so. I believe we sent Kamala Harris out to kind of like hash out some details, but it sounds like it's been rejected. At least that's kind of what I'm getting from the vibes from the CNN article here. So yeah, I mean, I think we are definitely going to continue to support. I just don't see us putting any kind of boots in the ground. I'm sure if you've had any ear to this, you've seen the hashtag close the skies, inferring a no-fly zone. I don't think that's going to happen either. NATO has shot that down. We shot that down. Pretty much anyone who's come to the table talking about it is like, that's just not going to happen. So yeah, I mean, the way things are kind of looking, I'll kind of like give a little summation of kind of what I've gathered throughout the week. The siege strategy is kind of working from Russia. I think a lot of the reports was like, yeah, Ukraine's doing really well. They're doing really great. They're holding them off. They're doing great. They're blowing up tanks, and like we just got to keep it up. But it just kind of winds up being like, well, okay, Putin misfired or miscalculated on the idea of just walking in here and taking what he wanted, but he can still outforce, overpower, outlast the situation. So, I mean, this is just obviously me speculating from here. It's kind of looking like an insurgency type situation. It looked like that 41-mile whatever convoy was like a supply kind of thing. It wasn't necessarily just a bunch of troops, but Putin has asked Syria to potentially send some volunteers. They have a relationship. It's complicated. I don't know all this stuff. A lot of people are referencing things that have happened there. In Aleppo. I mean, I need to get my weight up here in this kind of situation. I do not have a political science degree, sadly. Sorry. But thoughts, prayers, support, definitely with Ukraine. I definitely, would keep, advising support. You definitely want to give what you can, attention, money, whatever, what have you. But these are just my kind of thoughts on the situation. It is kind of looking like a really kind of deep insurgency might happen if Putin doesn't say, okay, come to terms with me. Because, Zelensky is trying everything. Like, he's talking to anyone and everyone. He's pitching, diplomacy. It's being happened. Like, they're talking. There's like several or two places that are having like, ceasefire talks and all that kind of stuff. And the ceasefire is also a whole other thing. It's kind of happening in some places so that they can get humanitarian aid in, but it's not happening like in a fluid, like well way. Like it's really like, hey, potentially 30 minutes and then like, oh, there's fire again. And that's a lot on the Russian side, even though they'll say, oh, it's not us, it's the Ukrainian Nazis or whatever. Like it's more propaganda, but like things aren't getting done and aid can't get in. And that sucks because people are dying over that. It sucks to hear stories, about people fighting over food. Even hearing Russian soldiers who are stuck in situations raiding grocery stores. Shit's nasty. It sucks. But that's more or less all we got, folks. Sorry I don't have a lighter note to end on. I'm sorry. I gotta plug my shit too on top of it. I gotta be a little dirty little capitalist. Little piggy. Let's see. I got patreon.com/Isaiah News. That's the best way to support myself. We also have the Gmail, isaiahnews1@gmail.com. If you wanted to send me some feedback, let me know what I fucked up. Let me know what you like, hate, whatever. Let's see. We got an Instagram. That's Isaiah News. The Twitter is Isaiah_news. And Isaiah News 1, I believe, is the Facebook. Kapow. Pew, 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 pew. So that's how you get parasocial with me, if you would like. I hope you have an amazing weekend ahead of you. I hope the vibes are high and tight and nice. And hopefully I see you soon for some more good news. Bye-bye. Mwah.